guard at the camp, loaded my Browning and camera, and held myself in readiness. Dingo looked up at me with tears in his eyes. "Good fellow finished." This was evidently an opportunity that I had to make the best of. By pure luck, I got sight in the distance of 3 blacks carrying something heavy on their shoulders. It was the dead youth Sambo, wrapped in some rags. They tried to carry him away without being noticed. Apparently they disliked my presence. But what an excellent opportunity for me to take down Sambo from his airy bed and incorporate him in my collections. It would mean a complete skeleton. The gods, however, were of another opinion. I approached the burial tree, but I can still not see any traces of the dead one. I descend again, very disappointed, and I think the matter over for a long while.
You can see that he does things that must have upset them terribly. And still, when he describes their reactions, he kind of refers to a racial trait, that this was kind of what you could expect of Stone Age people. So it kind of denies them simple human reactions.
De begraver sina döda i träna och det blir bara skelettet kvar.
Och ni behövde det till samlingarna då?
Ja, jag fick hem 6 stycken. Alltså, hade någon utav infödningarna kommit på natten och sett att jag satt där uppe och plockade ner deras förfäder, då hade någonting hänt mig. Jag är inte frågan om det.
Förstår att de reagerade på det sättet?
Ja, det är klart. Ja, vad skulle vi säga om australier kommer hit och tar bort våra föräldrar som ligger här någonstans? Man ska ju inte göra mot andra vad man inte vill att de ska göra mot en själv.
Like for the remains that get taken away from here, the Wanyina, even old people, they even get really upset when they should put something away like a treasure, they put them away forever, you know.
At the time, I wasn't aware of their beliefs, as they tend to keep their religion to themselves. They would rather it be kept a secret. But then I hear the strange sound of human voices mumbling. I stand completely still and just look at him. He's surprised and embarrassed. He tries to smile, but it doesn't work. I can see a gloomy veil fall over his face, and his face turns hard. I'm going to call this spring Kurt Spring, after my little beautiful 5-year-old curly-haired son Kurt.
The thing is that a few years later, back home in Sweden, his little son drowned.
I was warned by my companion not to continue searching for the dead ones. A fatal revenge could be my punishment one fine day. He told me he heard Aboriginals using insulting words when talking about me and expressing their anger about my venture. I received similar information from another white man. We started back to Derby.
In September 1912, all the expedition members met up again from all over the Kimberley to begin the long journey home.
We arrived at the mist-covered port of Fremantle. It was forbidden by Australian law to take Aboriginal skeletons out of the country. 2 officers from the custom office made a brief inspection. "Have you got any skeletons with you?" he said. I quickly replied, "Well, I think I must have brought at least a dozen kangaroo skeletons with me." The officer's face brightened and he said, "I think you might be a bit of a joker, Doctor." "Oh, yes, definitely," I replied.
Now tell me, what is in this box?
And thus began the skeleton's long journey to Sweden.
The spirit is plowed away and is roaming around in this world, in this country. And the same spirit, they're looking for their box, for the body.
They'll rest in peace when they're back home. Other places they won't rest till they come back to their homeland. And they cry, cry, cry. Spirit won't rest in a different place like Sweden. That's not his home. He can feel that smell. It's smell of this bone family, people, this homeland. He won't rest.
It is a month since Mjoberg arrived back from his expedition to Australia. I attended his lecture at the Travelers Club and it was most entertaining. He is a gifted speaker who with humor and wit and almost like a force of nature kept his audience spellbound by his tales. The Australian continent lends itself to grand discoveries.
Mjoberg brought back an extraordinary insect collection, one which is still world famous today. But some in the Swedish scientific establishment were appalled by his skeleton collection. The gruesome detail in his travel accounts horrified people. The idea that contemporary Aborigines could be identified as the missing link was now being questioned. Mjoberg's human specimens were never examined or exhibited. Vidal and Söderberg never spoke to Mjoberg again. Laurel disappeared to China for 27 years, and Rosborg committed suicide shortly after he returned to Sweden.
I think that what he did in the Kimberley haunted him for the rest of his life. And he was lying there in bed, more and more paralyzed, and getting more and more nightmares about how the Aboriginal people followed him and wanted to kill him.
Eyes react slowly in contact with light. The patient is very stiff in the extremities, more on the right-hand side. Paralysis Egerton's tremor in the right hand and right toe.
He went to different doctors in Sweden and Denmark and Germany, and nobody could find a proper diagnosis.
Sometimes when you go to people who have passed away, you gotta go smoke yourself with a kungberry tree, you know? And when you go back to home, he can't touch you. When you go with that, he make you sick. Well, that bloke with kidney and thing, when he got sick, he didn't have anything to find out through the Aboriginal way. Well, we got a lot of things, we know how to fix people, when they're sick. Yeah, that's right.
The last book he wrote was called The Wings of Poison. It's a rather strange book. And by the time he wrote it, he was lying totally paralyzed in his bed. So it was quite a thing to write a book at that time.
They have this ability with their eyes to read your innermost thoughts.
In The Wings of Poison, he wrote that he had experienced a sort of a supernatural trip to a planet. He describes the highest evolved beings. They resemble the Aboriginal people quite a lot.
The Wanyan is the oldest image in the world today. We believe in the Wanyan. That's our creation. Wanyan said you don't have to have a mouth. You can think.
Some of them look like humans or some other form. But the common thing is that they can understand each other without the need for talking. They also have the most sharpest eyes that you could ever see, that you could ever experience. You can't compare them to the earthbound peoples. It's beyond comparison.
Mjoberg experienced something he referred to as the supernatural. His vivid descriptions were steeped in Aboriginal spirituality.
At the end of his life, he was very poor. He had to sell off most of his ethnographic artifacts. Obviously, he had not been able to create a name of himself at the end of his life.
He slowly faded away, getting more and more paralyzed. He died rather young.
Eric Mjoberg died on the 8th of July, 1938. He was 50. In 2001, Klaus Holgren came across Mjoberg's extraordinary collection in the basement of the museum. It had been overlooked for over 80 years. Its rediscovery caused a sensation in Sweden.
We have discovered a bit of Australian history.
So maybe they had a contact who had arranged for people to come in with artifacts to sell?
When I and my colleague Kim Ackerman did research, we could find no evidence whatsoever that there were any research done on these skeletons. Kim has tried to trace these human remains to certain places in Kimberley.
I went to Australia and I did it on pure intuition because I really felt it was time for me to go. And it